Bahrain, the genesis of the Formula 1 2023 season. New regulations still being wrestled with by teams as they look to extract pace, and a changing grid for this season. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the winner of the wooden spoon was this man, and he's not even in the game anymore. Nyck De Vries. After a promising one-off in 2022, he looked to be a good pick, but I personally had yet to be convinced. Good impression? No. Significant fighting with nitrogen at the tail end of the grid, and a lack of pace wasn't a great start. Sending Kevin Magnussen closer to Alaska than the apex of Turn 3 at Canada was, what I thought, was the writing on the wall. Little did I realise how right I'd be. It only took half a season for De Vries to have his dreams shattered. Oh, but who am I to critique? He's driven 100% Formula 1 cars than I have. So there's me told. Who knows what could have come from a full season? I mean, he did show small signs of improvement during his stint, but for the Red Bull family, that simply wasn't enough. So, in my opinion, harshly dealt with. But I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. Nyck De Vries then. Plumb last. From one end of the spectrum, the pendulum clobbers the other end, giving it third-degree concussion. Logan Sargeant remains at Williams for 2024, and I cannot understand why. More on that later, though. Another one of the rookies for 2023, he had a very topsy-turvy season. Mostly turvy, though. Inconsistent at the best of times, just like my driving, and when he was consistent, he was crashing. Okay, that's quite harsh, actually. Sargeant did okay, and that's as nice as I can be to him. Yes, he did score points. One solitary point, and only because Hamilton and Leclerc had plank issues. Otherwise, he'd have scored nothing. He was annihilated in the qualifying battle. In fact, he didn't go faster than his teammate once, the mighty Alex Albon. I mean, I guess his point score at his home race, well, quite the fairy tale actually, did contribute to Williams beating AlphaTauri in the Constructors. But that's like oven cooking a ready-made pizza and saying, oh, I did all of this from scratch. No, you didn't. So, Logan remains in F1 for 2024. But he has a hell of a lot to prove. Remember when I said I wasn't convinced by Nyck De Vries' 2022 one-off? I mean, it was at Monza in a car completely built for the job. Had he done Singapore as well, I think things would have been very different. And when Honey Budgie snapped his hand, little Liam Lawson had very big shoes to fill. And boy did he do that well. I don't have much to say about Liam Lawson other than he blew me away. I mean, Zandvoort was decent, very decent, Monza was good, Singapore was great, and Japan was good as well. Although, at Qatar we won't talk about, I just pretend that didn't happen. That was the litmus test De Vries should have got. From Japanese Super Formula into Formula 1, he adapted wonderfully. And if you watch some of his overtakes in Monza, well, he reminds me of, Daniel Ricciardo. Full send, no regrets. Just destroy and conquer. It's therefore absolutely criminal that he doesn't have a seat for 2024. In my opinion, he proved everything De Vries should have proved. That Williams seat should have been calling. The phone simply didn't ring. 2 points, 20th place, and a sublime statement posted by Liam Lawson. Formula One is, among other things, all about momentum. Just like that race start there. You have good momentum, you roll along and toboggan into the distance, singing and crying with unbridled joy. If you don't, then it's a pain train with hardly any gain. Haas, unfortunately, were the latter. After a 2022 season that saw Kevin Magnussen get a 5th place in the first race and a pole position to boot in Brazil, the last thing Haas needed was to give him a car with more problems. And that's exactly what they did. Although Magnussen didn't do himself many favours, beaten comfortably by his teammate in the qualifying and race head-to-head, but ultimately the car was a dog in race trim, my god. I mean, there's not much else to say. In my opinion, Haas are entirely to blame, providing a car that could only qualify well. A simply terrible specialist tool that was never going to be effective. Like a blunt sword or a very concave fork. Hopefully they fix up for next year, otherwise both their drivers will be feeling rather irked. Kevin Magnussen then, your 19th placed man.
Okay, you're in the top 10.
After an impressive 2022 campaign, I was hoping for much of the same from Zhou Guanyu. In fact, I was rather critical about the fact he was in Formula 1 when he first joined. I thought that Piastri should have had that gateway straight away, but money always seems to blabber in this sport. But he shut me up, and pretty well at that. 2023, and once again, we have a very similar problem to what Haas had experienced, although this time Alfa Romeo inherently lacked pace everywhere, and a lot of it. Zhou's trajectory is very good though. His teammate Valtteri Bottas still has the outright speed over him, but even so, Zhou wasn't completely outclassed, only losing out on the race head-to-head by 2 at 12-10. Once again, Zhou impressed me this year. He really did. It's the same old story as Haas though. The driver is good, the machinery fails to enforce that driver's pedigree. What can be expected from Zhou though? Well, his stint at Alfa Romeo so far has been a good one, although Théo Pourchaire and a bunch of others will pile the pressure on. But he continues to keep tabs with his teammates. Hopefully the car can be a vast improvement next season. But until 2026 at least, I fear that's becoming increasingly unlikely.
You're in the top 10 now, keep it up.
Oh, he never left. He just moved aside for a while. I'm sure Danny Ric was expecting a season-long break before thrusting himself back into Formula 1 action. I mean, Will Buxton said his avenues were all but severed. Will was wrong. Don't be like Will. A driver of Ricciardo's calibre simply doesn't stay out of the sport for long. That is, if they haven't retired. Or pretend to. Replacing De Vries in the AlphaTauri, Ricciardo got off to a good start in Hungary, beating his teammate Tsunoda in the race with an audacious one-stop. Belgium wasn't bad either, nearly claiming points in the sprint race. Then in Zandvoort, well, clearly he decided he hadn't had enough of a break. That was a joke, to be quite clear. Once again, though, he came back with a vengeance, which all came to a head in Mexico. A flawless weekend. P4 in qualifying, P6 in the race, in an AlphaTauri. Ric's return has been very decent indeed, and with him assisting Hugo Boss or Louis Vuitton or whatever they're called next year, the pairing of Ricciardo and Tsunoda is one to watch. Welcome back, Honey Badger.
Okay, you're in the top 10.
After Haas assassinated Mick Schumacher out of the team, some thought it was justified given the crash damages he'd given them. Others would have seen he actually beat Magnussen in the racing head-to-head in 2022. Either way, no matter what the jury thought, it wouldn't keep Mick in a Haas seat. And, well, thank God it didn't. That trial went to Nico Hulkenberg, who did everything he needed to do to prove exactly why he's back in the big time. Beat Magnussen and drag that Haas into insanely high places, a la the Austria sprint race. I'm deeply impressed with the Hulk, but even his muscly might can't bring that Haas car anywhere other than last of the pecking order. Once again, I wholeheartedly blame the American team for just not showing up, and for being a disservice to two very good drivers indeed. Nonetheless, I can comfortably say that Hulkenberg deserves to be in Formula 1, and I can confidently say, great season. All in all, let's hope Haas don't fall again next year to their greatest enemy, themselves. Valtteri Bottas. That man is thick. Like, does the V in his name stand for Valtteri or for voluptuous? I mean, I've bought the calendar, and you should too. That man knows how to sell his... Oh, sorry, it's Formula 1 time, isn't it? Bottas clearly seems to be very comfortable now. Multi-year contracts is something he deeply missed having the luxury of at the sleeping giant of Mercedes. His qualifying pace is clearly still a force to be reckoned with, having beat Zhou convincingly in the qualifying head-to-head this year. Once again though, I'm going to become a broken record. Alfa Romeo didn't show up this season at all. After a 2022 full of promise and optimism, the promises turned to pessimism with the ever-fleeting hope that points might just be on the horizon. And there were. Only 10 of them, but he's the first driver into the double figures in 2023. And he made the most of what he had underneath him. A massive cake.
You're in the top 10 now, keep it up.
"22 races, 3 teammates, beat them all." Granted, they all lasted varying lengths, but even so, no mean feat. Especially when one of them is an 8-time Grand Prix winner. I must say, Yuki has been amazing this year. When Gasly left, all eyes were on him to be the leading force of the AlphaTauri team. And he did not disappoint. 17 points, almost a blinder in Abu Dhabi, to secure 7th in the Constructors ahead of Williams. But that didn't happen. Many reliability problems shackled the young Japanese amoeba from scoring potentially higher as well. Who knows how Monza would have gone, or Singapore, if he hadn't been nerfed into Narnia by Perez. There's not much else to add here. Consistent, crafty, and quick. Tsunoda has really come alive in Formula 1, and may the evolution of his skill and craft continue in 2024. There are drivers I have a lot of good things to say about. There are drivers who I colour with vibrant, radiant superlatives. Alex Albon falls into none of those. He falls into the category of drivers I simply run out of superlatives for. Take Canada, for example, defending consistently and beautifully in a much slower car to claim points. 7th place to be precise. He would once again get another 7th place, an Italian job at Monza that once again played beautifully, not only to the car's strengths, but also paid great homage to his racecraft that year. Gone are the days where they raced him so hard. Oh no, don't ever turn your snout up at Alex Albon. The Thai driver has really spiced things up over the last couple of years. Destroyed his teammate to boot. Fundamentally a one-man team at the Williams outfit. It wasn't even close. He has done a simply sensational job. And I can't wait to see what the future seasons bring for this superstar. Absolutely amazing. From Alex Albon. There's a bit of a gulf between our previous man and this one. Ocon scored 58 points in 2023, which is 34 less than he scored last year. This is the same man that beat Fernando Alonso last year, on equal terms, yes. And then we remember why that actually was. Now, by no means was this a bad season for Ocon. Okay, there were bits of it that were quite circumspect. Spain, his defending against Alonso was extremely late. Almost a plane crash there. In fact, Ocon's defending and lack of self-accountability in itself is quite the palaver. There were highlights, the big one being the podium at the Monaco Grand Prix. His first since the fabled Hungarian Grand Prix win in 2021. Seems quite fitting that we're driving here with him then, doesn't it? His main mission this year was to beat his new teammate and apparent foe, according to every source ever, Pierre Gasly. He failed in that mission, but the gap was marginal between the two. Both have been quite strong this year, but Alpine would have certainly hoped for more after being able to challenge McLaren the previous year. All to play for though, and Ocon is certainly a decent man for the challenge ahead. Unless he tries blaming everyone other than himself. Brazil. Finally, man! Finally! Gasly has unleashed himself from the shackles of the Red Bull family, leaving AlphaTauri for the greener pastures of Alpine. And too damn right. 23 points in 2022 became 62 points this season, and his and Ocon's combined efforts made for an easy 6th place for Alpine in the constructors' standings. In a year that saw Otmar Schaffner removed from the team and other interesting decisions, the internal politics of Alpine are really what's keeping them from moving forwards. You cannot fault the job Gasly did this season though. A podium at Zandvoort was the big highlight, and consistency seemed to be his middle name, either being in the points or right on the cusp of snatching some away. The French connection then have all the ingredients to create a force to be reckoned with soon down the line, providing Alpine don't screw the pooch on that one. But they had better hope it doesn't marinate itself into un visage d'earth. So, where the last two drivers in Alpine cars managed to pinch a podium apiece each, This individual, in a much, much superior car, didn't. Every year, the F1 world asks if Lance Stroll is cut out for Formula 1, and it always ends up at the same conclusion. No. Horrendously inconsistent, trounced by his teammate, and he pushes his PT. Twat. I mean, the guy drove better with no wrists than he did with working wrists. How is that possible? Sure, the beginning and end of the season, mostly, were pretty decent. But the whole middle of the season was a catalogue of absolute disaster. Alonso was the litmus test, and proved that car was capable of podiums, if not a win. Stroll got nowhere near that. But of course, he gets to stay because his father, Santa Claus, would throw a hissy fit. Stroll then, 10th in the standings, pressure on again, and time must be running out on his Formula 1 chances. Right? Was he crumbly and flaky? Absolutely not. It's quite bad for a pastry, really. But nonetheless, a great effort from Oscar Piastri in his first Formula 1 season. 2 podiums, and, let's not forget, he won the sprint race in Qatar. Easily the best rookie of 2023, and it's not even close. After a year on the sidelines, everyone questioned if, number 1, he'd be ready for the challenge of Formula 1. Number 2, if swapping Alpine for the murky McLaren waters was a good idea. And 3, if he had a better rookie season than Lewis Hamilton. The answers? Yes. Definitely yes. And God no. But people have a narrative to try and cling on to. McLaren became a monster, no pun intended, at the British Grand Prix, and it carried through the rest of the season. The Australian rookie really did turn people's worlds upside down this year, but hopefully will move up a gear to really pose a threat to his teammate Lando Norris next season in 2024. For now, all I can say is, bravo Oscar, well done for 2023 lad. Seems quite strange that George Russell is down in 8th. I say that like it's a bad thing, but really it could have been a lot worse. You could have been Logan Sargeant. Russell was the victim of a few things. Bad luck, a la Australia, bad timing, and himself, especially in Singapore. In fact, I'm probably giving him PTSD driving here again, but it can't end as badly as real life, can it? Some people say he's cut quite a selfish demeanour out on the racetrack. In his defence, I say you can only think of the team so much when your season hasn't gone your way. When things have gone his way, and he's had a great run of things, then he's been brilliant. Abu Dhabi was the latest case in point, where he needed a good result to beat the McLarens to have a chance of securing P2 for Merck in the Constructors. He did. Undercuts and overtakes where needed propelled him forwards. Make no mistake, George Russell is by no means past it, by any stretch of the imagination. I'm sure he'll be hoping, nay, praying, that Mercedes finally provide the machinery to give him the chance to conquer Formula 1. And since they finally learnt that sidepods work, perhaps George will have a better time in 2024. In 2023 though, when George was on it, he was on it. And he was vital for Mercedes' challenge on Ferrari and P2. Ah yes, the only driver to win a Grand Prix in 2023 that wasn't driving the wing machine. The Singapore Grand Prix was a perfect example of Sainz answering critics who said he didn't deserve to be at the Scuderia. Pole position and the race win, using cunning and guile to ensure his position would be safe. However, where the critics lay was elsewhere. The headline acts for the Spaniard were few and far between, even with his consistent performances in that car. Abu Dhabi was really the cherry on top of that cake. A race where it was paramount that Ferrari were right in the thick of things, ruffling the feathers of the Silver Arrows. Sainz qualified 16th. Okay, not a great start, but surely the race would be better. No. Ferrari lost out to Mercedes. Well, there's always next year. By all accounts, it wasn't a bad season at all for Carlos Sainz. I'd say it was quite good, actually. But with the pressure and prestige of the Scuderia and the rallying, loyal Tifosi, how many more seasons does Carlos Sainz have left at Ferrari? Unless he really turns up the wick. Driver of the season. There, I said it. Lando Norris was utterly brilliant. And once that McLaren got sorted out, the smiles returned to everyone's favourite meme lord. Some people's favourite meme lord. Hang on, why did people hate this guy again? I don't know. Look, once McLaren sorted themselves out in one of the most incredible turns around I've ever seen, Lando never looked back. Destroyed his rookie teammate in the head-to-head, on both accounts. His race pace was ferocious, had a good chance of winning at this track here, Lusail. The Qatar Grand Prix could have been so much different if track limits wanted to play ball, and the FIA didn't reconfigure the track on the day for a laugh. It's all hindsight though, which is very unhelpful. Instead, let's summarise Lando's season simply with facts. 7 podiums, 17.5 in the race head-to-head, 15.7 in the qualifying head-to-head, 205 points, ever so close to coming away with 4th place in the drivers' standings. Still his best points in a Formula 1 season and his joint highest championship finishing position, despite how fierce the competition was. And let's not forget, this guy is only 24 years old. The future is bright, and I tip my hat off to you, Lando. You're a superstar. Place, for most people, would be a great result. You'd be sprinting through the hills screaming, "Look at me! I'm a big deal now!" But not Charles Leclerc. Shafted with horrendous luck, and at times inconsistency, I doubt Leclerc would be very happy with this result. Even so, I'll butter him up a little. Leclerc got 6 podiums, a smattering of pole positions, and did beat his teammate Carlos Sainz. So that'll impress him a little. Leclerc's biggest enemy, though, is his own team. And that's really not helpful in the grand scheme of things. Ferrari have got to sort themselves out, especially when they were easily the closest challenger to Red Bull last year. Really, Leclerc had a very decent year, make no mistake of that. But last year he was in the Championship Challenge, so he would have been hoping for so much more. Perhaps 2024 will bring better omens for Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, and the whole of Ferrari. I'll get it out of the way now. Fernando Alonso is my favourite driver. Just ever. Has been since I started watching F1 in late 2004, according to my parents, and still is to this day. I've enjoyed the triumph, the trials, the sadness, and the multiple years of seeing one of the greatest drivers in motorsport in inadequate machinery. When people saw he made the decision to move from Alpine to Aston Martin, they said he was mad as a rabid dog with an extra dose. I'm glad he shut them up. All of the years of hurt, for me, were worth enduring. As in race 1, he took Carlos Sainz for a siesta and provided move of the season in race 1 at the hairpin against Lewis Hamilton. That's switchback. Don't even chat to me. It was sensational. Even at the end of the season, where Aston repeatedly shot themselves in the foot with upgrades that downgraded the cars. Typical, really. I mean, Brazil was a masterclass in defending. Went right down to the last lap and ended with a deserved podium. There could have even been a win this season at Monaco, had Aston not short-circuited their synapses. Regardless, the 43-year-old Spaniard continues to show that the old guard aren't done yet. Here's my second favourite driver in Formula 1. Yes, you can like Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton at the same time, it's not illegal. Hamilton performed great this year on most occasions. He outclassed George Russell, where many of his critics placed his back against the wall last year. He was ferociously consistent throughout the season, only retiring from one race and finishing in the points in every single other event. Particularly towards season's end, things started to get tasty, challenging Perez for P2 in the driver's standings and having phenomenal pace in the USA. Until depression happened. A P2 in Mexico, with the fastest lap as well. British Grand Prix podium at the Spanish Grand Prix, and another pole position to add to his collection in Hungary. His race pace, as always, ferocious. Mercedes, though, once again dropped the ball on their end. Not to say that Hamilton's season was completely faultless, Belgium and Qatar to name a couple of moments, but still a strong season from the 7-time world champion. Once again, though, the question remains for 2024. Can Mercedes finally provide a rocket ship that can bring Hamilton the fateful 8th? Second place, Sergio Perez. Matches his initials, so that's convenient. On his day, Perez was unstoppable. A master of controlling the tyre wear and had pace by the bucketful to dispatch of his rivals. Unfortunately, his day didn't come around very often. The moment Perez said he could challenge for the championship after Baku, I knew it was done. I knew it was. Really, P2 is amazing. You should be elated with that result. But look at what his teammate did in the same car. Look at Perez's qualifying performances, especially towards season's end. Look at how he came under pressure to losing P2 to not only Fernando Alonso, but Lewis Hamilton as well. By all accounts, this should be a good result, but I can't help but feel like Perez did not deliver. Yes, the anti-squat and anti-dive characteristics of the car may have contributed slightly, but equally Perez's greatest enemy is himself. And he meets himself way too often. With an increasing lineup of drivers that are proving themselves more and more worthy of snapping up that seemingly cursed Red Bull number 2 seat, and despite Christian Horner saying that Perez did all he had to do for 2023, I'm afraid the pressure is on again for Perez in 2024. Invincible, unstoppable, monumental, mesmerising. These words and more can describe the kind of driver Max Verstappen is. They can also more than capably describe the season that Max Verstappen had. Only a couple of minor forks in the road. Other than that, he was easily the best driver on the grid. I mean, let me give you some statistics. Over 1,000 laps led this season. The first driver to do it in a season. 19 wins, record broken for the most wins in a row since Sebastian Vettel at Red Bull 10 years ago. Finished on the podium in all but one of the races that season. Sorry Max, but Schumacher holds that record alone for now. And also has the highest win percentage in any season of Formula 1 ever, having recently beaten Alberto Ascari. The Red Bull, so unbelievably reliable, insanely quick, pinpoint precision at every corner. Verstappen didn't bat an eyelid in 2023. Other than the small Singapore sore, this season was nothing short of perfection. No one could touch him, and when they could, he always still seemed to have the answers. Man and machine in perfect harmony. Destroyed his team, destroyed him like it wasn't even close. The Dutch driver deserves to be a triple world champion. And with the trajectory of Red Bull only being stopped by the laws of physics, there's every reason to believe that more records will fall, more championships will be collected. Max Verstappen then, your 2023 Formula 1 World Champion. An absolutely lethal weapon from start to finish, and it looks like no one can challenge him.